John Wayne Gacy. He was the friendly neighbor, the enthusiastic clown at children's parties. He was also a cold-blooded killer, hiding a horrifying secret behind his mask of normalcy. For years, Gacy lived a double life, burying his victims beneath his suburban home. His crimes shocked America, exposing the dark underbelly of seemingly ordinary life. This is the story of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. It's a story of betrayal, unimaginable cruelty, and the enduring impact his crimes have had on our understanding of evil. Prepare yourself, for this journey will take you into the heart of darkness. John Wayne Gacy's early life was unremarkable, almost tragically ordinary. Born in Chicago in 1942, he was the second of 3 children. His father was an alcoholic, often abusive towards his family. Gacy craved his father's approval, but his efforts were met with scorn and rejection. Despite a troubled home life, Gacy appeared to be a normal, well-adjusted young man. He was active in his community, even serving as a precinct captain for a local political party. He was married twice and had 2 children. On the surface, he was living the American dream. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, a darkness was brewing. Gacy's need for control, likely stemming from his chaotic childhood, began to manifest in disturbing ways. He engaged in petty theft and fraud, even serving a brief prison sentence. Looking back, there were red flags, subtle hints of the monster Gacy would become. In the early 1970s, Gacy's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. His business ventures failed, his marriage collapsed, and his repressed desires intensified. He began to act out, preying on vulnerable young men, luring them to his home with promises of work or money. His first known murder occurred in 1972. The victim, Timothy McCoy, was a teenage boy traveling through Chicago. Gacy offered him a place to stay for the night, a seemingly kind gesture that masked a sinister intent. He lured McCoy to his home where he sexually assaulted and murdered him, burying his body in the crawl space beneath his house. The act of killing seemed to awaken a dormant beast within him. His urges intensified and his crimes became more frequent, more brazen. Gacy's ability to compartmentalize, to separate his dark fantasies from his public persona, was astounding. As Gacy's reign of terror continued, his crimes became more frequent and more horrific. He often tortured his victims before killing them, using ropes, handcuffs, and other implements of torture. Gacy seemed to revel in the power he held over his victims. He would often dress as Pogo the Clown, a character he had created for children's parties, before committing his murders. Despite the increasing number of missing young men in the area, Gacy managed to evade suspicion. He was a master manipulator, using his charm and connections to deflect any suspicions that arose. However, as the body count grew, so did the risk of discovery. Gacy's home on Somerdale Avenue became a tomb, a gruesome testament to his depravity. The stench of death permeated the air, but Gacy remained undeterred, his thirst for control and domination insatiable. Gacy's home in the quiet Chicago suburb of Norwood Park was the epicenter of his killing spree. This unassuming ranch house became a nightmarish labyrinth, where young men were lured with promises of work or companionship, only to meet their gruesome end. The crawl space beneath the house was transformed into a makeshift graveyard, a chilling testament to Gacy's depravity. He often targeted vulnerable young men, runaways, and those struggling to find their place in the world. He used their desperation against them, offering them a helping hand that ultimately led to their demise. The details of Gacy's crimes, as they were later revealed in court, are too horrific to recount in full. The house on Somerdale Avenue became a place of unspeakable horror, a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary life. It stands as a chilling monument to the victims, a place forever stained by the evil that unfolded within its walls. For years, John Wayne Gacy managed to deceive an entire community. He was a pillar of Norwood Park, a successful businessman, and an active member of the local Democratic Party. He even entertained children at parties and hospitals as Pogo the Clown. No one suspected that behind this facade of normalcy lurked a cold-blooded killer. The news of Gacy's arrest in December 1978 sent shockwaves through Norwood Park and beyond. The community was in disbelief. How could the friendly neighbor, the man who hosted neighborhood barbecues and volunteered at charity events, be responsible for such unspeakable acts? The realization that a monster had been living among them, hiding in plain sight, was a bitter pill to swallow. The case shattered the illusion of safety and security, forcing people to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. The investigation into John Wayne Gacy's crimes began with the disappearance of a 15-year-old boy named Robert Piest. Piest was last seen at Gacy's construction company, where he had gone to inquire about a summer job. His disappearance raised suspicions, and police began to investigate Gacy, who had a prior conviction for sodomy of a minor. A search warrant for his home on Somerdale Avenue revealed a house of horrors. The stench of decay was overwhelming, and the discovery of a class ring belonging to another missing boy confirmed their worst fears. The crawl space beneath the house was a scene of unimaginable horror. The bodies of 29 young men and boys were found buried there, their remains decomposing in the damp earth. The sheer number of victims was staggering, making Gacy one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. The discovery sent shockwaves through the nation, exposing the dark underbelly of suburban America. Understanding the motivations of a serial killer like John Wayne Gacy is a complex and disturbing endeavor. Psychiatrists and criminologists have spent years studying his case, attempting to unravel the psychological factors that contributed to his horrific crimes. Gacy's troubled childhood, marked by an abusive alcoholic father and a strained relationship with his family, likely played a significant role in shaping his psyche. His need for control and his inability to form healthy emotional attachments were evident in his relationships with others. His repressed homosexuality, considered taboo at the time, also contributed to his internal conflict. His crimes were often sexually motivated, a twisted expression of his own repressed desires. Gacy's ability to compartmentalize, to separate his dark fantasies from his public persona, was remarkable. He lived a double life, hiding his true nature behind a mask of normalcy. John Wayne Gacy's trial began in February 1980. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against him, including the testimony of survivors, forensic evidence linking him to the victims, and his own contradictory statements. The defense argued that Gacy was insane, but the jury ultimately rejected that claim. The trial was a media sensation, with reporters and spectators from around the world flocking to the courthouse. The gruesome details of Gacy's crimes, combined with his chilling demeanor in the courtroom, captivated and horrified the nation. On March 13, 1980, the jury found Gacy guilty of 33 counts of murder, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. The judge sentenced him to death for 12 of the murders, and to life in prison for the remaining 21. Gacy spent 14 years on death row, during which time he continued to maintain his innocence and even painted pictures, some of which depicted clowns. John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994, at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His death brought a sense of closure to the families of his victims, but the scars of his crimes continue to haunt them to this day. The legacy of John Wayne Gacy is one of unspeakable horror and enduring pain. The Gacy case had a profound impact on the field of criminal profiling. His crimes highlighted the fact that serial killers can come from all walks of life and often appear to be normal, upstanding members of society. The house on Somerdale Avenue where Gacy committed his horrific crimes was demolished in 1979. The lot where it once stood remains vacant, a silent reminder of the horrors that unfolded there. The case of John Wayne Gacy continues to fascinate and horrify people around the world. The Gacy case was a watershed moment in the development of criminal profiling. Prior to Gacy, serial killers were often viewed as monstrous aberrations, easily identifiable by their bizarre behavior and obvious signs of mental instability. Gacy shattered this misconception. He was, by all outward appearances, a normal, well-adjusted man. He was active in his community, held a steady job, and was even known for his charity work. This dissonance between his public persona and his horrific crimes forced law enforcement to rethink their approach to investigating serial murder. Gacy's case highlighted the importance of behavioral analysis in criminal investigations. Profilers began to focus on the how and why of a crime, rather than just the who. This shift in focus allowed investigators to develop more accurate profiles of unknown offenders, leading to more effective investigations and ultimately more solved cases. The advancements in criminal profiling that resulted from his case have undoubtedly saved lives, but they have also come at a high cost: the realization that monsters can lurk behind the most ordinary of facades.